Hi, it's 5:30 on a Tuesday, and I am so glad that you will be joining us. And even if you are listening to this and it's not 5:30 on a Tuesday, I'm really glad that you're joining us. Those are the NBC chimes that are an artifact from the Museum of Broadcast Communication that I brought with me when we all quarantined, because of course the museum is closed. And I'm here at 5:30 to have a happy half hour with you and to toast you as we go into the rest of the week. And I have some news. I think I told you a little bit about this last week, but the museum is opening. We are so excited to have the museum open. It'll be opening on July 24th, and you'll be able to come in and you'll be able to see the exhibit that we still have from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's the Stay Tuned exhibit, which talks about the television industry as well as rock and roll, and how these two industries in the 50s looked towards each other and decided, wait a minute, we need each other, elevated each other. And it tells you the story from Ed Sullivan on all the way to MTV. It's got a great collection of wonderful, it's like one of the most guitar filled exhibits that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has put together. There's a lot of music, there's a lot of memories. We think it's a really wonderful exhibit for you to come to with your family, because you can not only tell the stories about when you were young to your kids, but they can also tell you what the music means to them, because this music lives on. And then you'll be able to also go down memory lane with Bozo and see our tribute to Chicago television, as well as the Radio Hall of Fame. And if you go to the Radio Hall of Fame on Facebook, I want you to take a quick look. I want you to vote. We are now we've nominated already, but we are actually electing the class of 2020 for the Radio Hall of Fame, which of course is housed at the Museum of Broadcast Communication. But today on Happy Half Hour, we have a guest, and I'm so excited to be able to be talking to a former colleague of mine and a dear friend. Her name is Maureen ODonnell. And Maureen ODonnell is not only a writer at the Chicago Sun-Times, but she's an obituary writer. She's a talented woman. And Maureen and I are going to be doing a program on Thursday, which we would love you to sign up for, which is the fine art of obituary writing. Maureen has really taken obituary writing. She's a phenomenal reporter, an amazing writer, and she has made the obituaries that she does, whether it's a celebrity or whether it's somebody who is living next door to you and you didn't really know them. She's put an art to it to put together the storytelling on it. And on Thursday, we will be putting together a program with the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. It's an online program, so you can sign up for it at the History Center at Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and you'll get a Zoom link for it. And it'll be an hour and a half. We're going to talk a little bit deeper than will today in our happy half hour about obituary writing. We're going to actually suggest and help you maybe craft the top of an obituary, maybe somebody in your family. I think this is something that what we have heard from people is that everybody wants to know how to tell the story of someone's life. And I think nobody better to do that with than Maureen. So Maureen is here with us today, and I'm very excited about that. Maureen, how are you?
Hi, Susie. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. It's really great to see you. And it's really great to actually be doing this with you. This is going to be fun on Thursday.
Yeah, definitely. And I always say obituaries aren't about death, they're about life, and they can be very uplifting. And they have lessons and they remind us don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. So yeah, I'm excited about it too.
Yeah. And I love the way you say that. They aren't about death. They are really about life.
Hmm.
And the beauty of the writing that you do is that and the storytelling you do, which all hinges on the interviewing you do, right?
Hmm.
That it finds these parts of people's lives that are have always been there, but that we may not have ever heard of, right?
Oh yeah, I think all the obituary writers I know, we actually have an organization called the Society of Professional Obituary Writers. All of us really enjoy finding out little known stories, um, fascinating tidbits about your neighbors' lives. They may have started the La Leche League in a suburban Chicago living room, or they may have nabbed a Nazi soldier who was sometimes called one of Hitler's favorite soldiers. They may have presided over a microphone company, a company whose microphones have been used by everyone from Elvis Presley to President Obama, to being used during the USS Missouri surrender, when the
Wow.
Japanese signed surrender documents during World War II. These are our neighbors. These are people who live all around us, and we all love sharing these stories. And I frequently say that I think obituary writers are frustrated history teachers.
I think that's one. I started out at the Sun Times as an obituary writer. I was felt very lucky to do that,
I,
and I used yeah, pour through the death notices, and I was always amazed to find just these stories that we thought again, and so many people would say, "You're kidding." I lived next door to them for I don't know how long. I'd like to talk about a couple of some of the most recent ones that you've done that I think are just fascinating. And by the way, before I go away from the fine art of obituary writing, I want to not only thank our partner History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. But I wanted to thank the sponsors. That's very important. Lesser Latry Pasquale and Howe, and attorneys at law, are sponsoring this program, as well as Life and Death. Thank you so very much for sponsoring the program on Thursday. And let's get down to a little bit more of the obituaries. I think that Fritz Goldman, thank you so much, Fritz, our engineer today and always. I'm grateful to you, and maybe you could show us one of those obituaries that we were going to talk about. The first one is this one. I chose this one because it was recent, but also we have this exhibit. Stay tuned, and in it, Stevie Wonder is in there, and the outfit that he wore at the Olympics when he performed. And this was just recently, wasn't it?
that was several years ago, and they were associated for 27 years. Danny Week was his sound man for 27 years. It was a close relationship, and Stevie Wonder relied on him and trusted him.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I thought it was recent. And so how, tell me how you found this. Is this something that somebody calls up and goes, "We've got an obituary for you, and this is who this is," or is this something that you have to kind of look for?
It's all over the map, Susie. Sometimes I get a call from a reader. Sometimes I see a death notice. Sometimes I see things on Instagram or Facebook. And in this case, I started seeing some talk on Facebook about Mr. Leak passing away. And I also got an email from someone in the music industry about his passing. And here's a man who uh, came from Sardis, Mississippi, with his parents in the Great Migration. And he went to Manley Grade School, grew up in the Henry Horner homes, and then went on to Lane Technical High School. A very gifted guitarist. I love this story that his wife told me. He was so good that that wonderful 70s group, the Five Stair Steps, who had a
Oh, yeah.
classic song, Ooh Child,
Yes.
which, it's just one of the best songs of the 70s. The Five Stair Steps asked him to go on tour with them, but he hadn't graduated from Lane Tech yet. And he said, "Mom, I'm going on tour with the Five Stair Steps." And his mother said, "The day after graduation, you can do anything you want, but you are going to be walking on that stage." And as soon as he got his diploma, he went off and toured with the Five Stair Steps at about 17 years old. He served in Vietnam. He and some other vets in Vietnam formed a group that was called 100% Pure Poison, and they had some great funky 70s hits, and he's still getting royalties from them. He comes
Wow.
back to Chicago, and at that time there were almost no black sound engineers. He certainly couldn't find any, and people weren't really open to hiring him. And so what he did was he used his guitar playing skills to sort of learn. He'd go to all kinds of sessions. He'd be their session guitarist. He was very good, and he could play any kind of music. And all the while, he was watching and learning. And then he got a gig at Chicago's Universal Studios, which was legendary. That was the place where I believe the echo chamber was first experimented with, and a lot of multi-tracking experiments happened there. This is all downtown Chicago. We all walk past these addresses. And he wound up, he's working at Universal Studios and eventually segues into live sound. And he got an invitation to do a show at the Tokyo Dome. And he said, sure, I can do that. And then he arrives, and there's 63,000 screaming fans. And he had to figure out how to balance maybe 30 types of sound, intake all of them, and make them go out into the Tokyo Dome and sound good.
Oh
And
my
he's
God, that's
working.
it's not easy
He's
at all.
Oh, and he's working with, at that point, at that night, the show had Sheila E. and let's see, Johnny Gill of New Edition, the Doobie Brothers, Hall and Oates. So he goes from, sort of the hermetically sealed studio into the fire, and he loved it. He loved it. When he sent that sound out and 63,000 people reacted, he said, there's nothing like it. And eventually he becomes part of Stevie Wonder's close, trusted inner circle. And when he and his wife, Fran Lee, got married, Stevie Wonder met her and just said, "What's your sign?" And she said, "Pisces." And he said, "Oh, this is going to be beautiful." And this
Oh,
is
that
one of
is
our neighbors. This is one of our neighbors.
it is just it's lovely, and it's lovely that you are able to bring those stories together. How much work does that take? How many interviews do you have to do? What's the length of time it takes you to write an obituary like that?
Sometimes, Susie, sometimes a colleague of mine once said, sometimes the magic is there. You make two phone calls and all the riches are there for you. And sometimes you make 50 phone calls and it's case by case. Sometimes you get a great story with one interview. Sometimes I'd say it's more likely when you're writing an obituary that you're interviewing anywhere from 4 to 8 people. And and sometimes it's not until you talk to that eighth person that you get the perfect quote and you feel like you have the essence of that person. You have an idea of the essence of that person. I once wrote an obituary about a woman named Mehta Elsa, who I believe lived in Morton Grove. And I saw her death notice, and it said she participated in the 1948 Olympics. She was a gymnast. And from that, I learned so much about Chicago and immigration, patterns of immigration. The German immigrants who came to Chicago, in the 1920s, 1930s, established Turner Halls, which were places where people could go and get physically fit and learn gymnastics. She became very adept at it, but unfortunately, World War II and the cancellation of the Olympics affected her career. But her and I also learned a little bit about the Olympics and gender. She got a group bronze because in 48 there were not individual bronzes for women for gymnastics. And it shows
Wow.
you that was just yesterday in some ways.
So,
And
but you can I just say you also you make a lot of phone calls. There's no doubt about this. But you're a reporter. You've been a reporter for a number of years. You're an excellent reporter. I know that,
Mhm.
and you're also verifying all of this information. It's not as though you're
Right.
taking the stories and the anecdotes that people are giving you. Some of people, really know details of other people's lives. Some people don't always remember, but you're also verifying everything, right?
Oh, for sure. And we can do
Mhm.
that, news articles that happened at the time that these events were occurring. We're confirming it all with old news articles from various newspapers, multiple sources. Sometimes I'm calling the Chicago History Museum or the main Chicago Public Library. And that's part of the fun. It's detective work. Um, and we do have people from time to time who tell us things that aren't accurate, and I think sometimes they're very well intentioned. It's just that when stories get passed through families, they sometimes, it's like a game of telephone. By the time the 12th cousin repeats the story, it's changed a little. And so there have been times when somebody tells the Sun Times, you should write about this person. They invented post-it notes, and you know that's easily provable. The 3M company, which makes post-it notes, actually had a very expansive historical library. about the creation of Post-it notes. I think they may have even had a company historian. And with a phone call, we were able to ascertain that it would have been a great obituary, but it wasn't true.
That's great. That is great. Yeah, sometimes family
Yeah.
lore doesn't always live up to family facts. But we
Hmm.
have another obituary. I think this one has to do with that woman you were talking about with the microphones, right? I think
Mm.
we sometimes forget in Chicago how we are such an amazing place with so many different amazing people there, and the Shure's microphones. Tell us a
Right.
little bit about the woman.
This, I frequently kind of harken back to my parents. They were immigrants who came to Chicago because it was such a hotbed of factories and good paying jobs after World War II. And Shure Microphone was around in those days and it's still around today. It's in Niles, it's in a Helmut Jahn designed building, I think on Toohey Avenue. And Rose Shure married the founder of the company. And the microphones that they created have been a standard, an industry standard of excellence. Her husband, I think, founded the company at circa 1920. And after he died, she was elevated to the post of, I believe, CEO. And she kept the company committed to quality and great research and development. And consequently, the microphones that were used from pretty much every president since President Roosevelt are now used by musicians like Mumford and Sons and Hosier and Cage the Elephant and Fallout Boy and Wilco. And, they, going back to some older rockers, when Roger Daltrey from The who famously twirls his microphone when he sings,
Right.
it's your microphone. And that's a
And you know,
company from Illinois.
right? We've got some in the museum. We've got Shure microphones. You couldn't be doing anything in broadcast if you didn't. We've got that in the exhibit as well, that people come to
Yeah.
see. Microphones become almost not just the prop, but an iconic symbol. We have it is not a Shure, but we do have Dick Clark's microphone that he held forever in the American Bandstand. It's this white microphone that was famously, he had to have his, and what's interesting when you look at it, Maureen, is that it is a microphone that just is painted with White House paint. You figured it out. You just made it happen in TV. You just had to make it happen.
You see the postage stamp with Elvis, and he's got that mic. That's a sure mic. This is
Oh,
it's a standard of quality from politicians to musicians for decades and decades.
well, that is great. And so, if people want to see more Shure mics, come on over on July 24th. By the way, if you want to come on over, you do have to make an appointment. We are keeping ourselves safe, we are keeping you safe. We want to make sure that everybody who comes to the museum feels that they can walk out and feel like they not only had fun and they had a great experience, but they have been kept healthy and kept safe. So, we will ask you to wear a mask, and we certainly will ask you to also, even though the first 2 weeks that will be open until August 1st, is free, we are still asking you to make a reservation online. So there was my commercial. We moved in out of that, and now let's go back to a little bit more obituary talk. And I think we have somebody else up here on our yes. This was for some of us. This was a little bit of a shock. I know for his close friends, it probably wasn't, but this was lovely. You did such a great job on this, Maureen. Tell me, you've done an awful lot of industry people, haven't you?
I have. I think, Chicago doesn't, it's not like New York or Los Angeles. We don't have movie stars and Broadway stars walking around. In some ways, newscasters are our stars. And they become very trusted, they become part of people's lives. And especially somebody like Dick Johnson, who worked in the industry for so many years. He was with NBC for over 20 years and ABC before that. And he developed not only a reputation for excellence and facts and good humor, but also of being a real mensch. So many young reporters in the industry say that when they walked into these newsrooms, their first big jobs in a big market, and they were nervous, Dick Johnson was the person who came over and said, "Hey, welcome. Hey, I really like that report you did last night." And
Oh,
Dick, unfortunately, when the coronavirus pandemic began, Dick decided to remove himself from Chicago in order to protect himself. He had a previous lung condition, and he went up to northern Michigan to sort of wait it out. And unfortunately, he took ill there and passed away. And his reputation was just so, he was versatile, he was resourceful, he was kind. He covered the Andrew Cunanan um, serial murders, the murder spree of the man who was accused of killing Chicago real estate mogul Lee Miglin and Italian fashion designer Gianni Versace. Dick Johnson covered, he was on Air Force Two, I believe, when with Vice President Bush when the assassination attempt occurred on President Reagan. So here
oh,
was a man who could cover a story um, on the north side, south side, west side of Chicago, but also was covering national news. So very versatile, very solid, very well liked, very kind, and he never lost his enthusiasm. He came into work every day, his colleagues say, excited to be there. And he was also the guy who could, as they used to say, pull a rabbit out of a hat when he walked into the newsroom in the middle of the day and took his jacket off. There might have been a little story that wasn't too well reported yet, that only the barest facts were known, and they trusted Dick to turn it into something for the 10 o'clock news.
oh, that's excellent. That is excellent. Was that a hard thing to do? That's something that, of course, is on deadline, and you need to get the minute that started coming out on Facebook, right? And is that something that you when you move into that? How long does this when it's a deadline story? How long do they give you to get it done?
In that case, I actually someone someone from the Sun Times actually learned that he had passed, and you you know, deadlines are constant now, and it's not like you're writing for tomorrow's paper and you can turn it in at 7 p.m. So we posted 3 or 4 paragraphs immediately to alert people. We confirmed that it was true, and that of course his family already knew about it. And then we went with it and we posted 3 or 4 paragraphs and then just kept building on the story.
Right, right,
So
right. It's interesting.
so news gatherings changed a little. You know, the deadlines are constant. They're not in the evening anymore.
Right, and I think it's interesting. I had somebody because we talked about you joining us last week that you would be here, and I actually had somebody criticize us and say, "What are you doing with print journalists?" And I think people seem to forget that we're the broadcast museum, and broadcast encompasses not only radio and television but also digital. And right now, as a news reporter, obituary writer, there's no way that you're not a digital reporter. You have to be. You've got to be
Exactly.
there. It's open,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Right. There's no
100%.
distinction in.
We're
Mhm.
all doing social media. We're all on Twitter. We're all on Instagram. We're all on Facebook. And I think it's been interesting to see how the business has, you know, evolved. And there's a lot of respect between, you know, whether it's Vice News and Slate or the New Yorker or the Washington Post or the Chicago Sun-Times. There's a lot of collegiality. There's a lot of crediting that goes on. You know, if the Sun-Times breaks a story, other outlets credit us because we got it online first. So the lines
Right.
have really blurred. Hmm.
But that getting it first still is important, correct? Is that
Yeah.
accurate, or is it
Oh,
getting?
yeah.
I mean, get it first, but get it right. Damn it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I think
That
that
never
never
changes.
changes.
That never changes whether you're print or broadcast. You want to be first, but you want to be right. And it's you know, and that's been the same in the news business for 100 years. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes,
Mm.
yes. So let's just talk briefly about Thursday because I think that's going to be an hour and a half. So we are going to talk a little bit about. I actually tried to stay away from some of the things that I asked you about which were some of the best, some of the worst, some of whatever of the obits you did, so that everything would be somewhat new on Thursday. And we're also
Mhm.
going to talk a bit about putting together the stories. What I like about this is some of the tips, some of the clues that we'll be talking about are things that you can use for a family obituary, but they
Mhm.
are also things that you could use to help other people in the family collect the
Mhm.
story of your grandmother. All these wonderful digitally. So
Mhm.
if you use some of these skills that you've got, and that we can talk about, then is what are the questions we can ask? What are the open-ended questions? How do we get people to open up about their lives? So
Right.
we'll
Right.
we'll be doing a little bit of that. Um,
Mhm.
and uh, and then again, just so you know, if you want to join us, this is a free program. It is a collaboration that we're doing with the History Center in Lake Forest and in Lake Bluff. And we're really grateful to be doing this. It's a great little gem of a museum, with just a fascinating look at how the North Shore has evolved. And they approached us on this, and just thrilled to be able to do it. And that will be, so you register over there, go to their website, the History Center, look up the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, and you'll be able to register there. We do need you to register so that you can get the Zoom link. It's going to be, you're going to be able to ask questions. It's not going to just be my talking to Maureen. It's going to be you talking to Maureen as well. And then we have an exercise or two that we're going to give you so that you can get a sense of, I think, when you're trying to sum up people's lives, and again, it's not just writing the obituary, you might actually be speaking at a family funeral and you want to figure out, how do I tell this story? There's so much about this person. So, how do I
Mhm.
sum it up? So
Right.
we're really looking forward to that. And for all of you who follow what we're doing here at the museum, we're going to be doing a little bit more programming online. But we know that you can catch us here on Tuesdays at 5:30, and you can also catch Aileen Bishop, our general manager, Livia Jackson. They will be doing their talk show on Instagram on Friday, on reality TV, and I think it's a history week because I think we binge watched Queer Eye this past week. So come see what's going on. It'll be a great show. It's always a fun time. 5:30 on Friday on Instagram and 5:30 here for our happy hour. And Maureen, thank you so much for joining us today. It was
Oh,
great to
thank
talk
you
to
for
you.
having me. Thank you for having me, Susie. It's a pleasure.
Well, you're not only a wonderful storyteller in writing, you're a wonderful storyteller in person. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will catch you next time here on the Happy Half Hour. Thanks again so much for joining us.
Okay.